Welcome to the Beehive. Today we're going to do a facing of a quilt. So there's two ways to finish off a quilt. Binding, which means that you have fabric that comes from the back to the front or the front to the back that overlaps that edge. And it usually adds another design element to the quilt. Facing is a way to finish off the edge of your quilt. It'll be very clean, simple. It doesn't add an additional design element because the facing will be only on the back side of the quilt. And that will give it a real clean, kind of modern or Asian look to a piece, if you wanted to think of it that way. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to face this fabulous quilt. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I've already done it, step one is to square up your quilt and clean up the edge. And you cut the edge, you know, like normally you have a little bit of the batting or the backing when you bind a quilt that you're flipping over, and it kind of gives that binding a little thickness to it. On facing, you trim up your quilt so that the back and the front and the batting are all the same. So I've already done that. I have cut my edges, and now I am going to measure the sides of this quilt to see how long my facing strips are going to be. And those strips are going to be, they can be anywhere from 2 to 3 inches wide. So we're going to do that. First I have to pick the fabric out that I want to face. And it really doesn't make any big difference. If I still have some of this, I'll use the same one. If I don't, I'll use something else. It doesn't show on the quilt, so it won't make a big to-do. So I'm going to go hunt for some fabric. It's times like this that I wish that G was around, but I am so not the camera person. So like I was saying, I am now going to pin my first strip for facing the quilt onto the quilt. And I decided to go with a 3-inch strip. And what you're going to do is you're going to put right sides together. Right sides together. Repeat after me. Right sides together. And then I'm going to pin it so it doesn't shift. And we're going to do the sides of the quilt first. So now my strip is pinned to the quilt, right sides are together, and I'm going to take a 1/4-inch seam. Are you there? Oh shoot. So we're going to do a 1/4-inch seam on this outside edge. I don't know about you, but this weather lately, this whole winter, this has been a weird kind of weather year. Yesterday it was almost 70 here and it was beautiful. Everybody was out walking around. Today it's blowing. It looks like it's snowing in the mountains and it's cold. So just like that in one day, Mother Nature decides to tease us with a little bit of good weather. And then just to keep us off balance, says, I think I'll give them a little bit of wind. And when you live this close to the mountains, the wind is a issue. Okay, now I have thread cut in my caught in, oh there it goes. Okay. I love this strip over here. If you can see it, it's actually got it from IKEA, and I was given the idea by a long arm quilter in Bend, and it's for knives. It's in their kitchen section. So I mounted it here, and then I have all my little tools. Some of these were throwaway tools from when I worked in the hospital back in the day before recycling. They used to throw these away, which was awful. So I have needle drivers, little forceps. I use all this stuff. Little crochet hook, my scissors. Yeah, this is a great little thing, and it's readily accessible. So now I'm ready to do that 1/4 inch seam of the first facing strip. So 1 strip down. Now this is the really important part. So my facing strip is right sides together. I'm going to iron it, press it open so that it's pressing this way. And then I'm going to sew an 1/8 inch seam along this edge on the facing strip, but I'll show you next. So back to the ironing board. Hope I didn't make you too dizzy with that quick move. So I've got my Panasonic portable iron, cordless iron, but it is portable too. Cordless iron. Crazy. So I'm waiting for that to heat up. In the meantime, wonder what you guys are doing. I have book group tonight. And the book group, let's see, a little chit chat. Let's see, the book group tonight, we're reading My Grandfather's Blessings, which is a great book. I would recommend it to everyone. It is a really feel-good kind of book. So maybe you should try to get a hold of that. I had a hard time finding it at my local libraries, but I did find it on Amazon, used, very good condition, for $5. Okay, the iron is getting ready. So here we go. See, this is my cordless iron. I love not having a cord. I love taking this into the camper. It puts out a lot of good steam. The only thing that you have to remember to do is not set it like this when you're going to shift something. You have to put it back on the dock so it keeps recharging itself. Okay, now my next, oh there you are. My next step is I press this so that my facing strip is there, and I am going to run an 1/8 inch seam along the facing strip, on the facing strip, not on the quilt. And so it will catch the backside seam of the quilt and the facing. Does that make sense? I'll show you after I'm done. Hi everyone, so we're back here in the beehive with a continuing segment of facing a quilt. We had to stop that first segment because life got in the way, but here we are back again. So what I have already done, what I showed you previously, was that I measured the sides of my quilt, because you're going to do the sides first before the top. And I cut 3-inch strips, sewed a 1/4-inch seam with the right sides together, and then once I sewed the right sides together in a 1/4-inch seam, I ironed it, pressed it out, and then I did an 1/8-inch seam along the top edge, so that actually caught a little bit of my 1/4-inch seam. And the reason you do this is because you're going to fold this over, and it's going to make that strip roll over so that you have this clean edge on the front. And then just to make life easier for myself, I folded over and eyeballed a seam edge, and then when I go to press this over, I will hand whip this down, and I will show you that in the next segment. But right now, what I'm going to do is to sew this side. So I took the other side, pinned my strip, my 3-inch strip, right sides together, and I'm going to run a 1/4-inch seam down this side first. So here we go. Glasses, glasses. So now what I'm going to do is press this open to be able to go down on the 1/8-inch seam. So I'm coming over here. I'm thinking my big board's looking pretty darn ratty and probably needs a new cover. Okay, so I'm going to press that out, get a little steam going. I love this Panasonic iron. I think I've said that more than once. I'm having one of those senior moments where you keep saying things over and over again. Okay, so I've got that pressed open. And now I'm going to sew on the strip side an 1/8-inch seam right down this edge. And you know, I'm not a perfectionist. I may be perfect, but I'm not a perfectionist. We're all created in the perfection of whoever we believe in. Isn't that right? So I'm coming over here and I'm going to just eyeball it. You know, eyeball it. Of course I need glasses to do that, but. So I'm going to look at this seam between my strip and my quilt, and I am going to make an 1/8-inch seam all the way down. And again, what that does is it helps this strip roll to the back. I just have to point this out. Look at how cute this is, a little baby camel and the mama camel. Or maybe that's the daddy camel. Well, it's not anatomically correct, so it's a parent. It's a parent. Okay, so now I'm going to just, at this point, quickly make myself a little seam. So see how, I don't know if you can see this, but this 1/4 inch seam is now tacked down by that little seam along here. But what I'm going to do real quickly now is just fold this over so I have it to be able to whip stitch on the back. And I'm not measuring it or anything. I'm just going to iron what kind of looks like a 1/4 inch seam. There we go. So the next step at this point is to roll this over. So, and that is because you don't want any of this strip to show on the front. You don't want it to look like a border. So I'm going to bring this over and I'm going to start rolling it. I think I might want to do this with the right side down. Then I can see what my strip is doing. And I'm going to press this. Oh yeah, this is much better. Then I won't uniron my fold. So I'm just going to start pressing this over. Just to kind of help it roll over. And it rolls over easier because of that 1/8 inch seam. See how it stays nice and stays over real easy? So then, just to help myself, I'm going to pin a little bit, because what has to happen next, it's not that this process makes finishing your quilt faster and easier than binding a quilt, it just gives it a different look. So I am just going to pin this down, because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to whip stitch this edge down just like you would whip stitch a binding. So here we go. I'm just going to keep that, and then I'll flip it over and show you kind of what it looks like. So what has to happen is I have to whip stitch both sides down, and then we'll go to the next step, which is to do the top and the bottom. Let me just show you. See this edge? This is what it's going to look like. And that is called facing. See, you don't see that little strip from the front, but it gives it a nice smooth edge. So, give me time to whip it down and we'll be right back here. So, as you can see, S-E-W. So, I have tacked down the sides of my facing strips by just hand whip stitching it along here. And once you do the sides and you turn them under and see how nice that looks, just no border, no distraction to this design, I'm moving on to the top and bottom. My first step is to do the bottom strip, and so I again cut out another 3-inch strip, right sides together. The only thing is I cut them out so they'll be about a 1/2 inch longer on either end, because I'm going to fold that in and under to finish it off. I'm going to make this about 1/2 inch when I cut it. I'm going to sew 1/4 inch along the line, right sides together, and then I'm going to press this open and do an 1/8 inch again seam all the way down to give it that ability to roll under. Now for the top of the quilt, I have cut a 5-inch strip. And the reason I did that is I'm trying to make it a little easier for myself. I'm going to make the facing strip also be the quilt hanging piece on the back, so I don't have to sew down a piece of fabric to be able to hang my quilt. My facing strip is going to be my hanging strip, so I cut it 5 inches, and I will do the same thing, leaving a 1/2 inch on either end over, so that when I fold it over I will be able to whip stitch that down, and I'm going to leave that, both of those ends, open so that a rod or whatever is used for your hanging can hang it up. Now if you use some other way of hanging your quilts and you don't want to do it this way, you can just do another 3-inch strip. So now we're going to go to the next step, which is to sew. Glasses, glasses. Getting older, so with each birthday I have to add some strength to my glasses. So not to bore you with all the hand stitching that I had to do, but we made it, like, suddenly it got done. So here's my edge, and look at how nice and clean it is. No border. And what I did was on the bottom, this is the bottom of the quilt, I flipped my 3-inch strip over, and then I kind of hand tucked it under and then whip stitched it down and whip stitched all along for the bottom. Now I am ready to do the top, the last one, and that is a 5-inch strip, and I sewed it just like I sewed the 3-inch strips. I put right sides together with a 1/4 inch seam, then I folded it over and did a 1/8 inch seam like you saw in the previous segment, and then I tucked this under and sewed a seam there with my machine. So with my machine I sewed that little seam there so it'd be finished and not fray on both ends, but I'm not going to be sewing this end down right here. I'm going to leave this open for a quilt hanger to slide in. I'm just going to whip stitch this part down, and so you don't want to watch that. So in the next segment of this video you'll see the finished quilt. But in the meantime, what I did between the bottom strip and the top strip was I got a pedicure, and you have to see this. You have to see this because I got little flowers on my toe, my big toe, the one with all the arthritis. It deserved to be treated well. So that's why it's taken me all day to face a quilt. Took a break for a pedicure. Okay, we'll see you back here. So I finished. I whip stitched down that 5-inch strip, and I left the ends open so the quilt hanger, depending on what type of quilt hanger I want to use, could fit through there. And the look that you get is this nice, clean, simple, modern, artistic kind of look to finishing a quilt. And this is called facing a quilt. Instead of putting a binding, which may add a different color or a different element to the quilt. So I like this type of finish for certain types of quilts. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for spending time with me. And we have lots of things going on in the future. We're heading out on a short camping trip, and I plan on doing a little hand stitching on that camping trip. We've been talking about our fall trip, which we want to make up through the Pacific Northwest and to visit Sylvia Pippin's shop in La Conner. That is on our list. We have a wedding to go to in Stevenson, Washington on our way, and then make a big loop through the Northern Cascades. So we might find some other quilt shops along the way to share with you. Other than that, right now, it is pedal to the metal for the Sisters Outdoor Quilt Show. And I have to finish a couple more things and get ready for my class. I'll be teaching a buttermilk basin design by Stacy West, specifically for this quilt show, which is absolutely adorable. And also doing 2 sit-and stitches, which is like you get to come sew anything you want to sew, and I'm like your resident opinionator. That's what I am. I'm full of opinions and help and any assistance you would need. So if you ever get a chance to sign up for Sit and Stitch, you want to do that, because that's just a full day of fun sewing. Well, thank you again. We appreciate you stopping by.